Not only is the Big 12 the best conference in all of college basketball, it is the most exciting race at the tip top. Who's got the inside edge?
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoops show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. Normally joining me on a Thursday would be Leaf Tulane, but he is out with a sore throat today, just struggling, and we want to make sure he gets his voice back. I've been missing my co-hosts a lot due to sore throats. I'm beginning to think it might be me. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. Hey, we're going to also work today at unpacking the ACC, which is itself weird and wacky, but more in the middle. And then we're going to get to our six-pack. We're rebranding our quick hitters thing as a six-pack. Can't wait to unpack some of that for you coming up later. But first, this Big 12 race, y'all, this is something else, and it is so much fun. On Wednesday night, and this is being recorded before this game takes place, West Virginia, Texas Tech, they're playing. And I'm recording this before that game. And with all due respect to Bob Huggins, and with all due respect to the members of my family who graduated from Texas Tech, after this game is over, these two will be a combined 2-14. And so we're not paying too much terribly attention. But after that, all 10 Big 12 teams will have played one game shy of half of their conference. And as it stands right now, at the time of this recording, all of the top six, so those bottom two, Texas Tech and West Virginia, plus the two Oklahoma schools, that's the bottom four. Let's forget about them for a second. Sorry. But the top six in the Big 12, all of them are in the top 17 in the current AP poll. Kansas State 5, Kansas 9, Texas 10, TCU 11, Iowa State 12, and Baylor 17. All six of them are in the top 25 at KenPom. Texas 9, Kansas 10, Iowa State 12, TCU 13, Baylor 14, Kansas State 15. And here's the thing. This group of six is all sorts of clumped up and mashed up together, partly because of what happened on Tuesday night in Ames, Iowa. Iowa State, Kansas State going at it. These two teams, here's what's so cool about this to me. Iowa State picked 8th in the preseason Big 12 poll. Kansas State, as you know, as we've talked about here on the show a lot, picked 10th in the preseason Big 12 poll. The only reason we're not talking about Ohio State as this crazy thing that's coming out of nowhere is because of Kansas State and what they have done. So these two square off in Ames. Going into the game, Kansas State has the sole possession of first place in the Big 12, followed by Iowa State, followed also by Texas. And so if K-State can get this win against Iowa State, they create a little bit more separation, get 2 games in the loss column over them. But no, Iowa State holds serve at home 80-76. And what's interesting about the Cyclones to me in this whole thing, Iowa State's calling card is their defense. They are 8th in the nation at KenPom in terms of defensive efficiency. And we talk so much about what they're able to do there, but they drop 80 in this game. It's the offense that made it go. And so if they're able to do that at any sort of consistent level, particularly away from home, watch out, because Iowa State continues to be for real. We talk so much about Caleb Grill and Gabe Kalsher and what they need to do for Iowa State to go. But folks, we cannot forget about Jaron Holmes. He's been coming on lately. The senior guard has 20 plus points in 2 of their last 3 games, including this win over Kansas State, an efficient 23 points on 8 of 11 shooting. He's got 13 assists the last 2 games. And so love to see that for Iowa State. But here's a big thing for me. Kansas State continues to perform well, even in this road game. They're right there with Iowa State. And so Kansas State, man, is doing what they need to do. And again, don't miss this with Iowa State. They have 5 top 25 wins this season. And so both these teams, again, with these Big 12 matchups, it doesn't do anything to diminish what we feel about these teams because they're going to keep knocking each other off. So with those results, plus a couple other Big 12 games from Tuesday night, TCU beat Oklahoma at TCU. Texas beat Oklahoma State at Texas. And so they keep pace. So here's the bunching. Here's why all this is crazy. We have these 6 teams that are within one game of first place, all within one game of each other. Iowa State, Kansas State, and Texas are all at 6-2, tied atop the conference because, again, Iowa State beat Kansas State. And then TCU, Baylor, and Kansas are all 5-3. Part of that is because Baylor and TCU have been coming up and because Kansas has dropped off a little bit. And so here's what you need to know about this race. The key to winning the Big 12, it's like I've been saying with the Pac-12. To win the Pac-12, it's going to be Arizona or UCLA. And in order to do that, it's not how they perform against each other. It's how they perform against the other 10 teams. The Big 12 is shaping up very similarly. And what I mean is this. It's not how these 6 teams perform against each other, because let's be honest, we've seen it already. They're going to keep beating up on each other and taking losses there. What they have to do to win the Big 12 regular season title is do work against the 4 bottom feeders, West Virginia, Texas Tech, and the 2 Oklahoma schools. And so a quick look at what each of these 6 schools has done against the 4 bottom feeders. Remember, Big 12 is true round robin, so you get 8 games against those 4 teams. Texas so far has played the most games against them and won them all. Texas is 5-0, so they get 3 more shots to go 8-0. Kansas is next. They have played 4, as has Baylor. Kansas and Baylor are both 4-0 at this point. And then Iowa State, Kansas State, TCU have each played 3 games and are 2-1 are Iowa State and TCU, and Kansas State's 3-0. So quick rundown of that again. Texas is 5-0 against the bottom 4 teams. Kansas and Baylor are 4-0 against the bottom 4 teams. K-State is 3-0. And then Iowa State and TCU are the 2 teams that have lost a game. Because here's the thing. The inside track to the Big 12 regular season championship runs through being 8-0 against those bottom feeders. Does that make sense? Additionally, part of who has the inside track going forward is the team, I think the team that has the most remaining games and who takes care of those remaining games. So, as I said, Texas is already 5-0, and so they've only got 3 games left against those bottom feeders. Kansas and Baylor have 4 each. Iowa State, K-State, and TCU have 5 left, but TCU is the school that is 3-0, while Iowa State and Kansas State are 2-1. So to me, in a lot of ways, if TCU continues to hold serve, because they've got an easier back half of the schedule, still 5 games against Texas Tech, West Virginia, and the Oklahoma schools, they're in good shape to keep moving up and potentially get into the driver's seat there in the Big 12. Now, some people might push back on that and say, yeah, but Texas, even though they've got fewer games left, they've already taken care of 5 of them and they're 5-0. I hear that and I buy it. But for me right now, you know what? I misspoke there. It's TCU and Iowa State that have dropped a game. It's Kansas State that is the one that's 3-0. And so in some ways, even though the Ken Palm numbers don't like Kansas State as much as the other schools, Kansas State has a nice inside track, assuming they can take care of work against the bottom 4. So keep your eyes on that. Folks, we go from the highest ranked Power 6 conference to the lowest ranked Power 6 conference. That's right. We're going to try to make some sense of the pile up in the middle of the ACC in just a minute. But before we do that, I need to tell you that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they are the #1 sports book in all of America. It's FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, honestly, it's even better. They got so many great features and make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today to get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/locked-on. FanDuel's got all your favorite bets from money line to point spreads, player props, and you can even combine stuff into a parlay. The lines for the conference championship games in the NFL are out for this weekend. Eagles favored by 2.5 over the 49ers, and the Chiefs by 1.5 over the Bengals. All of this on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/locked-on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So the ACC is also muddled, but in a different way than the Big 12. At the Big 12, it's all that congestion at the top. In the ACC, it's all this congestion in the middle. Basically, like 3 through 10 are all vying for a top 4 seed. In the ACC conference tournament, a top 4 seed gets you a double bye into Thursday. And so that's what you're trying to achieve. You just want to grab one of those 4 spots. Keep in mind, in the ACC, it's 20 games. It's an unbalanced schedule. Several of these schools have already reached the halfway point, and the rest will do so this weekend. As it stands right now, Clemson and UVA, Virginia, have sole possession of first and second place. We all saw that coming with Clemson, right? No, absolutely not. But after those two, folks, good luck sorting through this thing. Miami and North Carolina right now are tied at third place at 7-3, and whomever wins the Wednesday night's matchup between Wake Forest and Pitt will then tie with them at 7-3. Again, we're recording this before that Wake Forest Pittsburgh matchup on Wednesday night. Currently tied for 6th at 6-4 are NC State, Syracuse, and then the loser of that Wake Forest Pitt game. Duke could also move up to that 6-4 place. They are 5-4 right now, but don't play their 10th game until Saturday when they're at Georgia Tech. And then Florida State is 5-5. Obviously, if Duke loses, they would fall back to being tied with Florida State right there. So all those teams I've just given you, that's 10 teams in the ACC that are currently 500 and better in their conference record, with the 5 teams below them also clearly being also Rans, because the top 10 are all 500 or better. So Florida State at 5-5 is only 4 conference games out of first place behind Clemson, with still 10 games left to play. It's not unthinkable or crazy, especially given that we're not really sure what Clemson will do against everyone. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Now, this is all curious because the ACC is the longtime premier conference in all of college basketball. But as I said, they're currently 6th rated at KenPom among all the conferences, but they're at the dead last of the Power 6 conferences. It goes Big 12, Big 10, Big East, ranked 3rd right now. How about that? SEC, Pac-12, and then the ACC. Yes, the Pac-12 right now is rated ahead of the ACC at KenPom. And the ACC is just slightly ahead of the MWC. And so it's like, what on earth is happening with the ACC? Now, keep in mind, all of that is just simple projections. It doesn't necessarily say how you will perform on court or what you'll do in the postseason. To wit, last year, the ACC was 5th out of those Power 6 schools and still sent 3 teams to the Elite 8 and filled out half of the Final Four with North Carolina and Duke. On the opposite side of that, Big 10 was 3rd rated conference in all of college basketball last year. They had just 2 Sweet 16 teams and none in the Elite 8. So all that to say, these rankings, whatever, it doesn't necessarily matter in terms of postseason success. But we also know that a lot of postseason success is based on matchups and what happens with those. All that to say, the ACC is not ranked all that highly, and they don't seem to have an elite team establishing themselves. And it's also odd because of all the preseason expectations heaped upon, like North Carolina, preseason number 1, not currently ranked. Duke, preseason number 7, not currently ranked. Both of those teams ranked top 7 in the preseason AP poll, out of the top 25 right now. And by the way, that's potentially with Dariq Whitehead, one of Duke's stud freshmen, who's really starting to come into his own, potentially out for a lengthy amount of time. We're still waiting to hear the results of his injury from Monday night's game against Virginia Tech. Now, preseason, Virginia was 18, and then they've moved right on up, and they're 2nd in the ACC standings right now. Miami was others receiving votes. They're tied with North Carolina for third in the conference. Clemson, the team leading this whole thing, zero votes in the preseason AP poll. That's how wacky and upside down the whole ACC has been. So the question I've been getting asked a lot, and where we need to go with this with the ACC, can Clemson hang on to this thing? Well, according to KenPom, probably not. There are 6 teams in the ACC ranked ahead of Clemson at KenPom right now. Virginia, North Carolina, Miami, NC State, Duke, and Virginia Tech. Yes, 2-7 Virginia Tech. And so the predictive metrics, the computer stuff would tell you that no, Clemson will not hang on to this thing. But when you start to look at some scheduling things, remember, the ACC schedule breaks nice and favorably for the Tigers. They get to play Louisville twice, they get to play Florida State twice, and they get to play Georgia Tech twice. On the flip side of that, they only have to play Virginia once, Miami once, North Carolina once, and Duke once. So that can help Clemson's cause. But we're going to start to learn a little bit more as we get more into this. Their next 2 games are away and games they should win, but they are road games. They're at Florida State, who's been playing better, although they got pummeled at home by Miami on Tuesday night, and then at Boston College. Again, another game they should win, but you got to keep doing it. But here's the kicker. Following that, they host Miami, and then they go to North Carolina. So 3 of Clemson's next 4 are on the road, and we're going to learn a lot more about the Tigers that way. Now, Clemson shouldn't have to apologize for that schedule, right? That they can and shouldn't. There's nothing they can do with their conference schedule other than play the teams that the ACC puts in front of them. They can't help that Louisville is awful this year when they're usually really good. They can't help that Florida State is not as good as they usually are, right? Now, they should absolutely apologize for their non-conference schedule, which was ranked like 333rd in the entire country out of 363 teams. That was bad and woeful for Clemson, and it's going to hurt them probably with seeding as they're matched up against other like teams. But Clemson's in a place where they could do this thing. I mean, are they elite? No, again, I don't think there are any elite teams in the ACC right now, but they're good and they're strong and they could win what is a pretty balanced conference. However, I still believe Virginia will be the team that comes out on top of this thing. They're only 1 game behind Clemson right now. They still have to play each other. And so ultimately for me, I believe that Virginia prevails as the regular season ACC champion. We'll keep our eyes on that, but there's my vote as it is on Thursday, January 26th. Well, coming up to close out today's show is the 6-pack. I'm going to give you 6 little quick things that we saw at some point in recent days from college basketball. Some of them games, some of them observations, some of them stat lines from players. Here we go with that in just a second. All right, friends, the 6-pack coming at you. We're going to start off the beaten path a little bit. And that wouldn't seem to make sense, except it does, because it's Emoni Bates is number 1 in our 6-pack. Remember Emoni Bates, highly heralded freshman coming in, went to Memphis last season, and frankly just wasn't all that great. Transferred not to a high major school, but back to Eastern Michigan, right? He's been probably off of your radar other than like they played Michigan early in the season. He had a great game. But Eastern Michigan, part of the reason he's even more off your radar is because Eastern Michigan is bad, like awfully bad. They are currently 4-16 and 333rd at KenPom. So right around a terrible ranking there. And so Emoni Bates, though, boy, he continues to do some very interesting things. For example, on Tuesday night against Toledo, Emoni Bates had 29 points, a phenomenal stat line. Oh, I'm sorry. That's 29 points in the first half. What? Yes, absolutely. In the first half against Toledo, another loss for Eastern Michigan, Emoni Bates was 10 of 14 from the field, 7 of 9 from 3 in the first half. And then he finishes this thing with 43 points on a legitimately efficient 15 of 23 shooting from the floor and 9 of 14 from 3 plus 7 boards. What an enormous game from Emoni Bates. Will he start to come back onto people's radar, draft things? We'll have to keep tabs on that. But again, he's outside of most people's college viewpoint right now, just because people aren't really paying attention to Eastern Michigan outside of MAC conference people and Eastern Michigan fans. All right, number 2, another something rising up out of what we expect to do something better. Georgetown wins a Big East game for the first time in their past 30 attempts. That's right. The Georgetown Hoyas came into this game against DePaul on a 29-game Big East losing streak. And finally, they pick up a victory, 81-76. Congrats to Pat Ewing. I don't think it's going to ultimately save his job, but it is a nice thing for a couple days. And even in this win, Georgetown was up 12 with like a minute and a half to go. And DePaul cut it to 3 in the final seconds of the game. But Georgetown was able to sink a couple free throws and get out with a victory. So they tried to give this thing away, but they couldn't. And thankfully, Georgetown finally gets a win. And part of another reason to bring this up is just to say college basketball is so much better when Georgetown is good. Like those JT3 teams of the mid, like the 2007, 8, like that era, man, like, and obviously the classic teams, like the 80s, the team that was a runner-up in 82 to North Carolina, those kind of things. It's like college basketball is better when Georgetown's good. Let's get back to there. All right. 6-pack hit number 3. We're going to get to some games now. Illinois beat Ohio State on Tuesday night, 69-60. Part of the reason I want to bring this up is because Purdue is just starting to stretch out that lead a little bit in the Big Ten standings. It feels like it's Purdue and then a gaggle of teams and then Minnesota, right? That's your bread club sandwich. Purdue's at the top, Minnesota's at the bottom, and then all these other 12 teams are all the extra bread and meat and lettuce and everything else in the middle. Can anyone come out of that clump to challenge Purdue? I don't think so. And Purdue keeps on doing just enough to win these games, but if a team was able to do it, Illinois is one that stands out to me as a possibility from a talent standpoint. They've won 5 of 6, and so keep your eyes on it. Indiana's another one, by the way. Sneaky, might be able to really start working their way back. Trace Jackson-Davis has been playing really well. 6-pack number 4. NC State wins on Tuesday night, 85-82 over Notre Dame at home. Probably should have been a bigger game, a bigger win against the Fighting Irish. But the reason I bring it up is less about the game and more about Terquavion Smith, who you might recall over the weekend against North Carolina took a hard foul from Leaky Black, fell, and was ultimately stretchered off the court. I bring it up because he is immediately able to play again. Not only that, he started and played 39 minutes for NC State in this game against Notre Dame. Didn't shoot well, was highly inefficient, but he played. And that is great news. We don't ever want to see any of these young men hurt when they're playing this game. Now, part of the reason he was stretchered off in the first place is just because he said, like, my neck kind of feels weird. And with protocols and stuff, at that point, it clicks in, it triggers, okay, we got to get the board out and cart him off, right? Even if you think he's fine, you don't want to get slapped with a lawsuit. So that's part of why he was ultimately stretchered off on Saturday in the Dean Smith Center there. But still, great news that Terquavion Smith is in NC State's next game back and playing. And hopefully he will continue to keep going, keep getting better, and be back to full strength soon. Staying in the ACC on Tuesday night, Miami headed to Florida State, number 20 Miami. And as I said earlier, Florida State has been playing a little better after their non-conference stinker of going through that schedule. But it was not to be on Tuesday night. Miami went in and absolutely just trounced the Seminoles, 86-63, a 23-point victory on the road for Miami, much needed there. Miami has 54 points in the first half of this one. All 5 starters had between 12 to 18 points that they scored. So basically what I'm telling you is Miami, Leonard Hamilton, right? Like Florida State always has like all these dudes scoring like 10, 12, 14 points, and they'll have like 7 of them. That's exactly what Miami did in this game with all their starters. And so Florida State just still trying to figure out what they are, but Miami does the work of keeping track with North Carolina, tied for third in the ACC as North Carolina won at Syracuse on Tuesday night. And then finally, number 6 in our 6-pack. I know that on Wednesday's show, Andy Patton, my co-host, had a whole bunch on the McDonald's All-American rosters for you. And I just wanted to point out one extra thing, just a neat family legacy stuff. You had, as part of this roster, 2 players selected who are the sons of previous McDonald's All-American players. Obviously, one of them, right? Bronny James, the son of LeBron James. But the other is a more highly rated player in the class, DJ Wagner, the son of DeJuan Wagner. Such cool stuff there for those 2 families to have both fathers and sons named as McDonald's All-Americans. Oh, but hold the phone, by the way, because for the Wagner family, it goes one step further. Not only is it DJ, not only is it DeJuan, but Grandpa Milt Wagner himself was also a McDonald's All-American back in 1981. So yes, you have 3 generations of this, not just that they're college basketball players, or not just that they played basketball. 3 generations of this family were all the tip-top elite high school seniors coming out in their classes and all made the McDonald's All-American game. That's just cool stuff. Legacy that they'll be able to tell generation after generation. So keep an eye out if DJ Wagner ever has a son that comes through college basketball, or a girl. I mean, there's obviously the women's McDonald's All-American game as well. That'd be pretty cool. 4 generations of this family all in this game, the 4th of which is a young lady. That'd be pretty cool stuff. So anyway, best of luck to everyone on both of these rosters, the men's and women's rosters, and congrats on accolades well earned. And we cannot wait to see you in college basketball next year. Well, that is it for today's show. Coming up tomorrow, a super fun show. My co-host Andy Patton is going to have, Chris Gordy, the host of Locked On SEC, and Josh Neighbors, the host of Locked On Big 12. Why? Because coming up this weekend is the Big 12 SEC Challenge, where we have a crossover and all 10 Big 12 teams will be in action against 10 of the 14 SEC teams for a late January step out of conference play to play each other. I love getting this. We used to have more of these, and now just once teams get into conference play, that's all they do. And so I'm so glad to see this from the Big 12 and the SEC. Going to be some great matchups. Kansas might take their first ever 4-game losing streak under Bill Self. But obviously, these 3 guys will have more on that for you on tomorrow's show. For now, make sure that you subscribe, like, and comment on this show. Thanks so much for tuning in with me. Would love to hear your thoughts on the Big 12 race, the ACC race, and any of these 6 things from today's 6-pack. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until tomorrow, peace.